Okay, let's see. Today is um, September 14th, 2015, and I'm not sure what in the heck I'm going to do in this little video. Several of you have asked me for some more of my stories. I'm not sure if you're humoring an old man or what. I have things that I do want to record about my past life, things that happened, not because they were really special in any way. Uh, but I just like to put them down because when a lot of those things happened, when all of them happened, I think, I never really told. There were some people around me who knew what happened, but I never told, even people that I went to bat for and probably didn't know about it because I didn't tell them, hey, the boss demanded that I fire you, and I told him no, that I wasn't going to fire you, and that he wasn't going to fire you. Those type of things, I just didn't tell the people. I was in meetings with, my department head, the boss or whatever, the supervisors were, and he would go into a racist rant, and I would call him about it, and you know, I handled in that meeting. I didn't go and tell anybody outside of outside of me. I didn't go and tell the black officers that we had working with her. I didn't say, hey, the boss is racist, and I just stood up for you. I didn't do that kind of stuff. But I would like, for some reason, to leave it recorded behind. So that's going to be something that I'm going to cover. Not just racism, but some other little things. A lot of it, everything was little really. But I do want to talk about them. I wish I could make them. You ever listen to National Public Radio? Who's it? Iris Glass. Some of those stories that are really interesting, humorous, and whatever. I don't think I'll be able to do that. I wish I could. Um, let me. I'm using and I did a review on it, the Dell Inspiration computer, and it has worked out fine for me. It has 6 gigabytes of memory, but it's a small computer, small case. There isn't really any slots in it. I think there is one slot in there. I have no idea what the hell it does. This is where I could add something, but I don't really think I could add anything to it. My son, he's 39. I mention that because I don't want you to think I got a little son running around here yet. He's getting a Dell. He already has a Dell. What is the XLP 8700 or whatever? But of course, they make that in a wide range of different configurations. And he has one that he hasn't had very long. And it has, my computer here has 6 gigabytes of memory. His has 8 gigabytes of memory. Plus it's a tall case with, you can put, cards in it. You can change the video card and all that type of stuff. Anyway, he's going to get a new Dell computer. He's going to spend about $1,200, and he's going to sell me his old computer. So this week or probably next week, I will have a new computer with quite a bit more power. It's going to make doing videos easier, doing the desktop. This computer does, it does okay, but when I'm recording the desktop and doing video at the same time, or when I'm compressing the video, editing the video, that type of stuff, I could use some more power. so I'm going to have that. This computer will probably be going to my ex-wife. Uh, she has a computer which is very much similar to this one, I think, but it's older, several years older. So this will probably be going to her. Uh, Let me change subjects a little bit. Let me tell you one little story that I just found that I found interesting. In my life, for some reason, I haven't been somebody who rang my own bell or not sure what you call it. A few years ago, I heard about something, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing this wrong. Socratic humility, and I'd never heard of that before, and I looked it up. And as I understand it, it's somebody who knows that they have some achievements or they've done something. You know, let's say it's because I think it comes out of something maybe that Plato or Socrates or somebody was discussing or whatever. So let's say it was an ancient Roman general or Greek general or something like that who conquered another nation or something like that and didn't acclaim himself, didn't do like the Romans did or whatever, where the general came into the city and supposedly there was a slave or something on the chariot saying into the general's being welcomed by these crowds and going to be given a golden sword and all this kind of stuff. And the slave supposedly was saying into his ear, what was it? Something, remember you're only a man or something like that. So I'm not sure, but for some reason I never talked about I never used position or power that I really had unless I had to, which very few times. Well, I never had any power, but a lot of times I saw, and I'm not saying that I was modest. I'm not saying that because I think deep down I knew that maybe it would come out that I had done something correct or done something well or whatever. And I'm not sure this is even a good example of it, but I thought it was kind of funny in a way. I mean, it would just kind of worked out, something that really worked out, and I didn't plan this. None of this was ever planned. I was about 40 years of age, and I was just been divorced for about a year, and I had a girlfriend, and she lived over north. I lived out south. She lived over north, and I was already a reserve police officer with the Raymore Police Department and had been for years and years. But the opportunity came up for several of us to go to the police academy. And so myself and two others or should it be two others and myself, I don't know. We're going to the police academy. So, but anyway, I was spent the night at my girlfriend's apartment, and then from there I headed out to go to the night class at the police academy. So I pulled out, and I think it was Antioch, drove up in kind of a wide street, and there was like one car. I think there was one car stopped at the stoplight, and then there was another car that was back like 3 or 4 car lengths from the car in front of it. So I I didn't pull right up in back of this car. I'm back several car lengths. Like, what's wrong with this car? You know, is the car stalled? What's going on with that? And then the light turns green, and that first driver goes on through the light. Well, the driver up there that's in front of me, his car starts coming in reverse, not rolling back. He put it in, you know, in reverse, and he's coming back, and I'm honking my horn at him, and then I start to put my car into reverse to back up to get away from him, and he bumps into my car. Before I became a police officer with Raymore, I had joined the volunteer fire department, and that's actually another story there. I had joined and I was in training. A bunch of us were in training, and once you completed training, you were authorized to use blue lights and sirens, but you couldn't do that until you had completed the training and they gave you your certification. Well, I was driving a Volkswagen Rabbit, so I got a light and had it on the dashboard, and I kept a stocking cap over it so nobody could see it because I wasn't authorized to use it yet. And the siren, the horn would not mount. I couldn't get it mounted. There wasn't enough room in the Volkswagen Rabbit. So the horn was sitting on, I bolted it to the bumper, and I thought, I'm going to bump into something with, you know, and break this thing one of these days. And then before I completed the training with the fire department, and again, this is another story. I'll try to remember to come back to it. The fire department found out that I was a reserve officer with the police department. And so they said, well, you can't be a fireman and a policeman. Like I said, that's another story. By then I figured out, I want to be a policeman. I don't want to be a fireman. Fireman's, you know, too much work, too much hard, dirty work, and too little glory, you know. So then, of course, when I became a police officer, I could use a red light and a siren. And I had that equipment for years. I think maybe once in over 10 years did I actually ever use it on my private, you know, my private vehicle. Didn't really need it, but I had it. But anyway, when this guy backed up and hit me, I made a note of his tag, state tag, and he drove, you know, he drove on. And so when I drove over to, you know, the police academy from my class, and I noticed that my siren horn was broken. So that night when I finished the class, I went by the police department and ran his tag, and then I didn't call him that night and wake him up, you know. So the next day I gave the guy a call, and this is where I found this interesting, kind of liked it. I called him up and I said, hey, you know, at Nolan Road, or, you know, at such and such a time, you backed into my car, and I'm not sure if I said, did I say siren? Anyway, you backed into my car and did some damage. And he said, so, then, it, you know, something about, I said, you know, if you backed into it, I honked my horn or whatever. Well, why didn't you stop? You know, why didn't you stop me or whatever? And I said, I had to be at class. And he said, so you're a student, are you? So you're a, you know, real nasty like. And I said, yes, I am, at the Regional Police Academy. And he said, oh, you want to be a police officer? And I said, no, I am a police officer. And he said, oh, I'm really sorry. You just tell me how much damage was done, and I'll send you a check right away. And I thought, because actually, I don't think I'm giving this little story justice. He was actually like he had to drag it out of me. I didn't say, hey, you ran into me. I'm a police officer. I'm going to charge you with, I didn't do it. He had to drag all that out of me. Oh, so you're a student, are you? Whatever. Oh, so you want to be a police officer, whatever. And I thought, man, that was beautiful. And he sent a check right away. So that doesn't sound interesting at all now after I've said it. But let me tell you the fire department part. When I moved out to the volunteer fire department, when I moved out to Belton, Missouri, Kansas City, Missouri. Now, I was a security officer in Kansas City, Missouri at a hospital. I worked at several hospitals for years as a security officer. When I moved out to Belton, I thought, I think I'll see if I can become a reserve police officer with the Belton Police Department. So I contacted him, and then they filled out the form or whatever, and the chief of police called me and said, no, you can't be a reserve officer because you're a security officer, and there might be some type of a conflict. And I said, well, I could understand it if, I was asking to be a reserve police officer in Kansas City, Missouri, where I'm a security officer, but out here in Belton, a completely different city, I don't know, you can't be a conflict. I found out later on that the Kansas City, Missouri would hire, and ended up, I didn't know it, I was actually in a class with a guy who ended up at a hospital security officer. We were both, I didn't know that he was a hospital security officer with Kansas City, Missouri, and he was he was going to class to become a reserve police officer. So when Belton turned me down, I thought, well, I want to volunteer in some capacity. So Raymore had a state fire protection district or whatever, and they had a volunteer fire department. So I joined that and was going through the training, and a bunch of us were going through the training. And I can tell you when it was, if I would look it up. That's when Roots was on TV. And Roots, if I remember correctly, ran Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 4 nights in a row. And I think Thursday night was unless it was 5 nights, I think it was 4 nights. That was the last episode. And all of them, that's before cable television, before HBO and all of that. So the entire United States was watching Roots. And I was watching with my family. And the radio went off fire. So I left. And in the past, just about every time that the tone would go up, a couple of times it was a few blocks from where I lived. So I was able to go there before the fire department even, was grease on a stove in a kitchen or something, So I would get there. But the other times when I responded, getting out on the 58 highway from where I lived, the housing area that I lived in, making a turn to get down to because I was in the city of Belton, and the fire station was in the city of, well, I couldn't hardly call it a city, the town of Raymore. I couldn't make that turn. There was just a stop sign there, and the traffic just wouldn't let me, and I didn't, of course, I wasn't authorized to turn on lights and siren yet because we hadn't finished our training. So, but this night, everybody was watching Roots, and it was a little later at night also. So I went up and I made my turn okay and got to the fire station. And the only other person there was the fire chief. Usually it would be a bunch of firemen volunteers, but tonight everybody was watching roofs. And so the fire chief and I took out the fire truck, and it certainly didn't amount to anything. I think another, it was not like we fought a fire, just the two of us or whatever. So now remember, I was at this point a Raymore reserve officer. One night a week I patrolled for Raymore. I've been doing it for quite a while. So we go back to the fire station, the chief and I, and while we're putting the truck away or whatever, the dispatcher calls the fire chief on the radio and said, the Raymore police officer wants to know how many firemen responded on that fire. And the fire chief said, that son of a bitch, not on the radio, turns to me, and says, that son of a bitch, none of his goddamn fucking business. Those Raymore police officers. I go, oh shit. So then I'm thinking, should I say something to him? Like, now, Chief, I understand perfectly how you feel, but I do just want you to know, And I thought, I'm not going to say anything. So after that, there's a meeting of the fire department, not because of that or anything like that, but a regular, one of the training meetings and whatever, and a bunch of volunteer firemen. So we're all there. And the fire chief gets up and he says, okay, homecoming is coming up. Raymore homecoming is coming up, and there'll be assignments. And I'm going to tell you what your assignments are. And I don't want to hear that you can't do the assignment you're given. Everybody's going to do the assignment they were given, and that's it. So then he starts, okay, so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, you'll be at the first aid tent with the ambulance. So-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, you're going to be, this or whatever. And then he named a few, and he says, okay, Jim Howard, you're going to be, and I can't remember what it was, you're going to be doing such and such. And I said, Chief, I won't be able to work that event. And he said, why can't you work the event? And I said, well, I'll be working for the police department at that time. And his face went red and the veins started popping out on his head. And I thought, oh, shit. And then he goes over and he starts talking to the dispatcher, who was the dispatcher that night. And then they're looking at me, and I don't know if they actually pointed or whatever. I thought, oh shit, then I was thinking, why didn't I say something? I should have said something to her that night to let him know, that, hey, I don't care, what you said, doesn't matter to me, or what you think. So then this group that I'm with, we're all waiting. It's time. We finished our training. We finished our certification. And especially the guy, I didn't really care, But all the guys are, why haven't we got our card? So, I got lights on my truck, and a siren, why haven't we, and I'm thinking, I think I know why. I think I know why there's a holdup and nobody's getting their card. And so then finally I get contacted by the assistant chief, fire chief, and he asked me to come in for a meeting. So I go up there and sit down with him. He says, well, Jim, we found out that you are a officer with, Raymore PD, and you can't be a police officer and a fireman at the same time. And of course, by that time, I knew I didn't want to be a fireman. I think I said before, it was a dirty work, hard work, and a lot more glory riding around in a police car with a gun, So, but I wanted to screw with him a little bit. So I said, why not? And he said, well, you just can't. I said, I don't see, it seemed to me like that. Well, no, no, you can't. Well, if you showed up at a fire, we wouldn't know if you were a policeman or a fireman. And I said, well, if I show up with an axe, then I'm a fireman. If I show up with a gun, then I'm a policeman. Seems to me like it would be good for the fire department to have, no, it can't be. And I said, well, okay. I hate to, I hate not being a fireman line, hate not being a volunteer firefighter, but I'm just going to have to stay with the police department. So all the guys got their certification cards then. Okay, let me know if thumbs up or whatever if this is interesting. If not, then I'm going to have to listen to more public radio and their storytelling things and see if I can come up with funny stories or poignant stories or stories that make you laugh or make you cry or something. Let me add a little bit here. I have a daughter who has been living in Sweden for many, many years, and I think she's coming to visit or to stay permanently. And I think she'll be here. With Hillary, you never know. You really never know. Very unpredictable. So the information I have right now is that she's going to be leaving Sweden about this time, flying to London and flying to the United States. So I just pass that information on to you. Thank you very much.